Donald Trump says that all presidents need legal immunity to do their jobs. Listen to this.
The president of the United States, and I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about any president, has to have immunity. Because if you take immunity away from the president, so important, you will have a president that's not going to be able to do anything. Because when he leaves office, the opposing party, president, if it's the opposing party, will indict the president for doing something that should have been good. If they don't have immunity, no president is going to act. You're going to have guys that just sit in office and are afraid to do anything.
Yet, until Donald Trump, no U.S. president in history has ever sought legal immunity for their actions. No president has ever needed it. No president has ever been charged with or convicted of a crime. And no president has ever before been granted legal immunity for their actions by the Supreme Court of the United States. Nonetheless, on July 1st, 2024, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in a 6-3 decision that Donald Trump had absolute immunity for acts he committed as president within his core constitutional purview. This is a court that the former President Trump helped to stack with Republican judges during his time in office. Trump's biggest ally in the effort to appoint judges was Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, who blocked nominees under Barack Obama, helping to create 17 appeals court vacancies for Trump when he took office. More than any of his recent predecessors, McConnell also held a Supreme Court seat open for Trump, and he changed Senate rules that sped up the process of confirming Trump judges. Let's take a moment to go over the current composition of the U.S. Supreme Court and how the various justices ruled in this landmark decision. The Supreme Court of the United States is composed of 9 justices, 1 Chief Justice, and 8 Associate Justices. Of those 9 justices, 6 were appointed by Republican presidents, and 3 were appointed by Democratic presidents. In their rulings on the case of Trump versus the United States, wherein Donald Trump was seeking legal immunity for any acts he committed while president, the court ruled perfectly along partisan lines, with the 6 Republican judges ruling that presidents should enjoy legal immunity for their acts, and the 3 Democratic justices ruling that presidents should not be entitled to such immunity. The fact that we now have this ruling from the Supreme Court signals something that is perhaps far more significant and far more sinister than many people may realize. It signals the end of an era that has spanned more than 800 years. In 1215, a historic event took place at Runnymede, England. King John of England was forced to sign a document that would forever change the relationship between rulers and their subjects. This document was the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta, or Great Charter, was a groundbreaking agreement between the king and a group of rebellious barons. It was originally intended to resolve disputes over the king's misuse of power and heavy taxation. But the Magna Carta's impact went far beyond that. It laid the foundation for something much bigger, something we call the rule of law. Before the Magna Carta, the world knew only the rule of monarchs. Kings and emperors could rule as they pleased, often making arbitrary decisions and always using their power to protect their own self-interests. The Magna Carta was a monumental document because it established the principle that even the king must obey the law. It also introduced rights that are still revered and protected today, like the right to a fair trial and to be protected from unlawful persecution or imprisonment. These ideas shaped the concept of the rule of law, which means that no one, not even a ruler or government, is above the law. However, the era that began more than 800 years ago effectively ended on July 1st, 2024, when the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in a 6-3 decision that Donald Trump and all presidents after him have absolute immunity for acts committed as president within their core constitutional purview, at least presumptive immunity for official acts within the outer perimeter of responsibility, and no immunity for unofficial acts. This ruling effectively erased 800 years of the rule of law and restored the rule of men, sending the United States back, from a legal standpoint, to the medieval period. In her dissenting opinion, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote, "For my part, I simply cannot abide the majority's senseless discarding of a model of accountability for criminal acts that treats every citizen of this country as being equally subject to the law, as the rule of law requires." In her separate dissenting opinion, Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote, "The President of the United States is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way under the majority's reasoning, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. Orders the Navy's SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power? Immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon? Immune. Immune, immune, immune." I'll remind you that during his presidency, from his first day in office, Donald Trump became consumed with matters of self-preservation. This included obstructing justice on several occasions by attempting to shut down the FBI's investigation, codenamed Crossfire Hurricane, of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election, an election that mysteriously got Donald Trump elected as President of the United States, despite the fact that, until that moment, Donald J. Trump had been an aimless, self-indulgent billionaire playboy who had absolutely no political education or experience. Two individuals attempting to investigate the connection between Russia and the Trump campaign were immediately branded as political enemies by Trump and were fired for simply doing their jobs. These were FBI Director James Comey, who led Investigation Crossfire Hurricane, and Acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe, who took over the investigation. Later, Robert Mueller took over the investigation, and Donald Trump then became obsessed with shutting down the Mueller investigation. Trump also repeatedly demanded that the Justice Department criminally prosecute both Robert Mueller and Trump's political rival, Hillary Clinton. To the shock and dismay of staff and advisors, Donald Trump continuously acted as though he had every right to use the executive branch of the government to go after his enemies. White House counsel Don McGahn even took the step of trying to teach Donald Trump how the government worked by writing him a 10,000-word memo to explain the Constitution, presidential history, and why Trump could not simply prosecute his enemies because he felt like it. There is no evidence that Donald Trump ever read that memo. Ultimately, a number of Trump associates and campaign members were charged with crimes related to the 2016 presidential election. These include George Papadopoulos, member of the Foreign Policy Advisory Panel to Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign; Paul Manafort, chair of the Trump presidential campaign; Roger Stone, longtime advisor to Donald Trump; and Michael Flynn, Trump's national security advisor. Donald Trump would go on to use his presidential power to issue pardons for some of these convictions, while his new ally and pick for Attorney General, William Barr, would find ways of letting others go. The Mueller report did not reach a conclusion about possible obstruction of justice by Donald Trump himself, citing a Justice Department guideline that prohibits the federal indictment of a sitting president.
I am the chosen one.
However, the Mueller report did highlight 10 separate episodes that would have almost certainly constituted obstruction of justice by Donald Trump. That's the kind of White House we had during the Trump administration before the Supreme Court granted presidents legal immunity for their actions. Imagine the kind of White House we would have under a second Trump administration in the new post-rule of law era.